the idea is how can Swachhata become a Swabhav? How can it become part of like our innate nature?
And what does Swachhata mean for those who don't understand?
Yes, Swachhata means cleanliness. But in the context that Mahatma Gandhi speaks about, and you have to think about it in 1930s, right? And when he was speaking about Swachhata, on a most like gross level, it was keeping our communities clean, keeping our homes clean. But on a more subtle level, it was a purity in our thoughts. It was a alignment between what we think, what we speak, and what we do. And that alignment comes from that sense of cleanliness, of purity. And so I love the theme of Swachhata in general because it's so deep. And it's so profound that on a most gross level, we are speaking about cleanliness in our behavior and in the way we are. But on a more subtle level, it's cleanliness in our thoughts, in our minds, in our hearts. And when it comes to that space, when that cleanliness is at that level, then how you are in the world is you become like the tool which sweeps the darkness away. You become that light. Adhyatmic, Adibhautik, and Adidevik. Each of those forms of pain are caused by different, there's different sources.
These conversations are called Moved by Love.
Yes.
And the title comes from the biography of Vinoba Bhave,
yes,
which is called Moved by Love.
Yes.
And I was so deeply moved by Vinoba Bhave's spiritual social action.
Yes.
Because he was deeply profound scholar of the Sanatana Shastras,
yes,
also global world religions.
Yes.
He studied, and when he did his Buddhan movement,
yes,
and walked barefoot around India, gathering the land the size of Scotland,
yes,
and giving it to the poorest
and people donating land to him. Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing that people are stingy about, it's their property.
Right. Namaste, and thank you so much for having us. I'm so grateful to be here, Paramatniketan, by the Ganga. So, Har Har Ganga.
Jai Ganga.
Jai Ganga.
Welcome. As Pujya Swamiji says, welcome home and welcome to your Himalayan home.
It really feels that way, and I think it's just genuinely feels like everybody's family here.
Yes.
And if we can make the world an extension of that, then I think we'll be moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, go straight in and ask you what you were doing yesterday morning. When we turned up, you were out of the heat and, kind of...
Yes, we were cleaning up.
What were you cleaning? Where were you?
So, ahead of Gandhi Jayanti, when we celebrate Mahatma Gandhiji's birthday, we have a whole series of activities that the entire nation does. And the Swachh Bharat mission, as you're aware, is an entire mission dedicated to clean India and really bringing and imbibing that value. And so for the 14 days or 15 days leading up to Gandhi Jayanti or the Swachh Bharat Divas, we do cleanups on a mass scale. I mean, everyone has been called by the government, has been called by the Honorable Prime Minister to really galvanize and encourage and inspire and motivate organizations, schools, blocks, panchayats, everyone to come together to clean up their communities. So this year the theme is Swabhav Swachhata and Sanskar Swachhata. And the idea is how can Swachhata become a Swabhav? How can it become part of like our innate nature?
And what does Swachhata mean for those who don't understand?
Yes, Swachhata means cleanliness. But in the context that Mahatma Gandhi speaks about, and you have to think about it in 1930s, right? And when he was speaking about Swachhata, on a most like gross level, it was keeping our communities clean, keeping our homes clean. But on a more subtle level, it was a purity
Right.
in our thoughts. It was a alignment between what we think, what we speak, and what we do. And that alignment comes from that sense of cleanliness, of purity. And so I love the theme of Swachhata in general because it's so deep. And it's so profound that on a most gross level, we are speaking about cleanliness in our behavior and in the way we are. But on a more subtle level, it's cleanliness in our thoughts, in our minds, in our hearts. And when it comes to that space, when that cleanliness is at that level, then how you are in the world is you become like the tool which sweeps the darkness away. You become that light.
I think you said that was cleanliness is closest to godliness.
Yeah, and it is godliness, right? Like you'll never go to a temple and you'll see filth being accumulated there, right? The idea of purity and cleanliness is actually the space into which divinity can flow into, right? And it's like that cup, if it's so full, there isn't space for anything. And here is actually creating that spaciousness in which light, in which godliness can actually come into.
That's beautiful. Last year I was in Mumbai and we were on the beach on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
We decided to go for an evening walk. A lot of people were there. It was Juhu Beach.
Yes.
And I was horrified by the amount of litter.
Yes.
Where people were sitting, they would have their meals and they would just throw it, and it was just like tens of thousands of articles of rubbish.
Yes.
Flowing into the ocean.
Yes.
I was, wanting to leave there quickly. I was like saying to the family, let's move from here. It's not a nice mood and environment to be here. It was about 7 p.m. in the evening. But it was very normalized to just throw the rubbish there, even if there were trash can, like just there, which says, please put your rubbish in the bin. People will throw it there. Do you feel that all of this outreach and advocacy, is it hitting home?
There's been a lot of progress. I really remember doing Aarti and our Rishi Kumars. They would have these nets, and literally during the Aarti, they would throw the nets out and like fish up, basically, not fishes, but fish up trash that would just be floating around. And so, yes, there's a lot of awareness. Yes, there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm and a lot more young people getting involved in the movement as well. And so I believe that when you create a mission and when you create a vision and a call, like the Honorable Prime Minister did, you actually say that this is of national importance. And therefore, it is our responsibility to be able to have a vision in which our communities are clean. And then, of course, the byproduct of that is you get more people to visit. You get more people who are not maybe from that space, who are just visiting and they're tourists, and they are, encouraged and inspired to stay in that space for longer, to really be able to get the culture and the essence of that space. Otherwise, if you see filth around, as you were saying, I wanted to leave, a lot of people might have that reaction. And so I think it's really important that this mission has come about. And yes, over the we're celebrating 10 years now of this campaign. But the idea now with this theme of Swabhava Swachhata and Sanskar Swachhata is, okay, let us continue to normalize not filth in our communities, normalize actually a clean environment, normalize segregating waste, normalize waste management, water management, wastewater management, so that we can have a community and a space that is healthier for everyone and that encourages and inspires people to come.
I understand very deeply what you're speaking of when you're speaking of Gandhiji and his non-violence and cleanliness and those aspects of his spiritual action. Although many may argue, certain choices politically were different, or you might have a certain view.
Yes, a lot of people have their thoughts about it. Yes.
In this lens, in terms of cleanliness, in terms of non-violence towards ourselves, to other living beings, to others, this is really, like people would say, not even for this world. In this, where it's so divisive, every political party is kind of against each other, or it's such a polarized world, not just here in India, but in other places, the US right now, in a polarized situation, love and non-violence seem impractical. And I think you're actually speaking to them from a very different place to where they are. They're in the cities, they're in the towns, they're not in the Himalayas. The world looks very different from the hills. How do you feel we can all collectively engage people in a more holistic worldview where it's not about, as Pujya Swamiji said so eloquently, it's not about consumption, it's about connection, which I think we're all looking for, especially the youth.
For me, because I was born and raised abroad in Los Angeles, I went to school in Berkeley, and I came here 14 years ago, and I've been in Seva. I was very touched by the examples of the freedom fighters, of the saints. I was very deeply touched by Ma Ganga, and I get that, to a lot of youth, kindness, compassion, love seem very impractical. But I think that's where youth leaders need to embody the powerful force that is there in love and kindness and compassion. Because I feel like oftentimes people don't really understand what we mean by love and compassion and service is actually a spiritual practice. And for me, my journey has been, I think each of us has a space which catalyzes this journey. For me, it's been an autoimmune disorder that hit me to a place where health really asks us to be aware of how we're living our lives. When we're sick, when we're on the hospital bed, it brings into perspective everything else that we feel is valuable. And then you realize actually that which is most valuable is my health. Because if I don't have this breath, I could be the most multi-millionaire person in the world with multiple houses and bungalows and cars and whatnot. But if I don't have a breath, all of that is futile. And I think that for a lot, and mind you, not everybody learns the lesson from it, but some people are actually really shifted by some life situations in which they see either disease or death, because these are they're really quick and really powerful reality checks.
And teachers.
Yeah, right. And so some form of, I'm a yoga teacher. And so in the Sankhya philosophy, which is the foundational philosophy of yoga, and gives rise to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and all the others, it speaks about 3 forms of pain: adhyatmic, adibhautik, and adidevik.
Right.
And each of those forms of pain are caused by different, there's different sources. So adhyatmic is that which is self-inflicted. Adibhautik is that which is someone else or something else has elicited. Like if you're going and you see a monkey and the monkey decides to come and bite your leg, there's very little you could have done in that situation except maybe not walk down that street.
Or perhaps a landslide in the
Or a
Himalayas.
landslide. Landslides and natural disasters is the 3rd type,
Right.
which is adidevik.
Okay.
Which is some divine forces have created a tsunami or a flood or something that has caused devastation. Right. So adibhautik more is another person or another living being has caused. So I think it's very interesting because if you kind of, it's like how we approached, if we have a place with a lot of waste, how do we clean up that space? We say, okay, where is the most amount of this waste coming from? Who is generating it? In the same way, okay, we look at pain. If we look at these 3 types of pain, which one is the one which has the greatest volume of generating pain consistently? Adidevik, do we have tsunamis or natural disasters? Not every day we are affected by this, right? So, okay, adidevik is a little less in the percentage. Adibhautik, someone else has inflicted a pain onto me. Somebody's, drunk and driving and they hit into my car, okay. That also is a little bit more than natural disaster, but still relatively less. Then the 3rd type, which is adhyatmic, which is self-inflicted, that's actually the majority.
Yeah.
Right? Us feeling like we need to compare ourselves to somebody else. They have this, therefore I should have this. They look like this, therefore I should maybe look like this. Or how come they got a raise and I didn't get a raise? Those type of things that actually create suffering for us is actually nobody else is doing but our own. And that's really beautiful because it gives us an opportunity to say, actually, we have the tools to choose happiness as a conscious way of being. And so if those souls who have had such a realization of what really matters in life can come together through organizations or movements like Paramatmikirtan or Gotharmik, or through some sangha, through some association of like-minded people who say, okay, now that I've had this realization, it is not in my favor to live my life as I led it. I want to live it in this way now. And in that space, I want to be healthier. I want to live a life that is more harmonious. And therefore, I choose love, I choose compassion, I choose service, because this is the only way in which I can lead and live with the highest realization that everything is pervaded by the divine.
And I think it's actually our true nature, isn't it?
Yes,
so
exactly.
We're actually out of sync with who we really are.
Precisely.
When we're adharma.
Precisely.
And compassion, I often think of compassion as being the essence of what being human is.
Yes.
So when we have these youth who are kind of disenchanted with the consumption of the world, or kind of the way life is driven at the moment in the current system is you need to work harder, earn more, spend more, consume more, and then you have happiness. But it's just a carrot that everybody's chasing, that there is no endless.
And for us, just to create spaces in which there is stop, pause, reflect. We're not going to tell you to be this way. Just stop, pause, reflect. And in that stop, pause, and reflect, you will realize that this cyclical nature that you're just doing is actually really not deeply fulfilling you. And that's really all that needs to be done. And I think also to create examples in our world of young people, young leaders who are leading by example, where we say, okay, if our world is so influenced by social media, is highly glamorizing certain ways of being, can we, as youth affected by these teachings so profoundly, create a different narrative in which we can glamorize that which is actually going to serve us for longer, right? You look at Mahatma Gandhi, or you look at Vinoba Bhave, or you look at Mother Teresa.
So I'm so glad you mentioned Vinoba Bhave. These conversations are called Moved by Love.
Yes.
And the title comes from the biography of Vinoba Bhave,
yes.
which is called Moved by Love.
Yes.
And I was so deeply moved by Vinoba Bhave's spiritual social action.
Yes.
Because he was deeply profound scholar of the Sanatana Shastras,
yes.
also global world religions.
Yes.
He studied, and when he did his Bhutan movement,
yes.
and walked barefoot around India, gathering the land the size of Scotland,
yes.
And giving it to the poorest
and people donating land to him.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that people are stingy about, it's their property.
Right.
Right? And to see this man who is, to what might look like people, really skinny, and yet how does someone who has really physically not looking like, really strong person, but yet they are so strong to be able to persuade people to do something for the greater good.
He's a brilliant example for us to
and there's
show.
there's so many people in our history, in the Indian history especially, because Hanuman Dass, it's a culture. When we look at this culture, what has really actually influenced me the most, which I'd love to share with you in a nutshell, is, so India, we call actually Bharat, right? And what does Bharat mean? Bha and Rat. There's two words, right? So Bha is light, is radiance, yes? And Rat is that which is in the pursuit of light. Now, light is a symbol of many things. Light is a symbol of wisdom in this example that I'm sharing. So India has been always a civilization. There's been 4 or 5 major civilizations. And each of them have their characteristic. Like you and I have our characteristic. We're very, there's a fragrance that each of us brings in. So similarly, these civilizations have had a particular fragrance, particular characteristic, which is uniquely theirs. And Bharat has been characterized for being a civilization that has always been for the protection and the preservation of Vidya, of Gyan, of light. And the people of Bharat, they must have a characteristic also. How do you differentiate them? This is in like Bhagavad Gita when, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna, how do you see this yogi who is equanimous, who is samatvam, who is pragyavan, who is living in this light of vidya? How would you differentiate such a person? So similarly, how do you see this person who is actually someone who embodies the teachings of Bharat, you know? And so it says that they will have tej. Tej. Now, how do you get tej? Tej means radiance. How do you get tej? Do you become weightlifting and then you gain a certain number of pounds and you got muscles and you're like, no. Do you have a lot of followers on your Instagram and then you'll get tej? Not necessarily. How do you get tej? And this is nirdik yogic shakti. You have essentially been able to manage your energy. That energy that you have the choice to expend out through your senses into the outer world, or to consciously learn how to conserve and utilize and then choose where you want it to go.
It's kind of like where you apply your senses, like the example of the horses and the chariot.
Yes.
We allow our mind just to run in all directions,
Yes.
wherever it wants to be, but here taking a conscious decision to not do certain things or to expend our energy in a certain way and direct it, because most people are not making any conscious decisions. They're just focusing on whatever the senses want to go towards, rather than consciously choosing where they want to go. I think.
And now, how do you do that is the question, right?
Yeah.
Through yoga, through sadhana. These are technologies. These are techniques that we've been given. Because I have this breath, but then how do I utilize it? I have these hands, I have these legs, I have these muscles, I have these bones. How do I effectively utilize this instrument I have been given? And that technology is essentially what we call yoga, right? So a lot of people will see only asana is yoga. I get on a yoga mat and I do 1 hour of my Ashtanga Vinyasa and I get sweaty, or I got into a studio and I need to do hot yoga.
Practice.
And yes, while the physical practice is deeply important, because there's a lot of energy in us that needs to be channeled. So asana helps us take the rajasic energy and channel it, so that eventually we can be more sattvic in our nature. Now I know there's a lot of different terms here, but the idea is we have to better manage the energy and the resources that we've been given, such that we become an effective instrument to be able to be change agents in the world.
It's beautiful.
And this is in the Gandhian tradition, or in the Vinoba Bhave. These are the examples that you see of what we say soul force, right?
Satyagraha.
Our soul has an immense amount of force, of power.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the person who looks really big and really strong. And then you'll see some, in the pandemic, you've seen people will get sick with the virus and, they look like totally healthy people. But what is that we need to work on to really increase our soul force, such that we become magnets of change, of that radiance, of that light? Initially, because we are in darkness, we need to strive towards light, towards vidya, towards service, towards purifying ourselves. But once we get used to doing that, then we become that instrument. that brings the light, that is no longer striving for that light, but is the light in the world.
It's beautiful. And I think just using the example of Neem Karoli Baba,
Yes.
one of the great people I admire is Larry Brilliant. He was a doctor with the World Health Organization who's accredited largely with the end of smallpox. He worked in India on the vaccine programs. And he said when he was with Maharaji, with Neem Karoli Baba, not only did he love everyone, but that we also felt that love to the fact that we started loving others as well. And that radiance, I think there's so much in that. There's so much in that love.
It's magnetic, you know. It doesn't need any words. There's a presence. And of course, if people are only looking in the world with these two eyes and looking at just how a person looks, how a person behaves in the world, what kind of car they're driving, what kind of home they are in, that's one way of looking. But when you are touched by someone who's really the embodiment of that powerful energy of the spirit, and who is so deeply connected, and who sees the unity in all of life, then you know that there's actually something else that is much more precious to hold on to share, to imbibe. And those are the people that need to come together to be able to inspire more young people, to make them realize that it isn't there.
That's amazing.
You'll never find it there.
I think I'm conscious of your time, and you know, we've already taken more than you had, which is greedy in a nice way. But I wanted to say that radiance, that service, and encouraging young people to be in that radiance, to be in that love, to be in the sadhana of moving towards making a difference, which I think we all want to do. Ultimately, we have that compassion within us. It's something that's really embodied here. The fact that I just love, when you told me I've just been in the forest cleaning for 2 hours, I got excited. I was like, wow, this is sadhana. Just like as if we do the Sundarkan for 2 hours, this is the same, because you're serving the divine through that service. So I'm really grateful to you and to everybody at Paramatniketan for doing so much service to people who come here, to the local environment, to Ma Ganga, and to the whole of India and the world from here. And I look forward to really connecting regularly to see how we can encourage everyone that volunteers with Go Dharmic to also come here and spend time, but to serve. So not just to look for, you know, spirituality can also become consumerism if it's not done with the right motivations and intentions for the service of the world, for love of God. And I think it's really wonderful what goes on here. So thank you for being here for the last 14 years and for doing everything you do.
When people plan to come to the ashram, there's so much that we learn from the rivers, from the forests, from the mountains. And that's why I think the Himalayas have always been that space where people come back to recharge and to get connected with the source. Because when you're with the forest, when we're with the rivers, you see that divinity in all of creation and that harmony. And then, you know, as Swamiji says, you know, come to nature, be with nature, and realize your own nature. So that's what Bharat allows you to do, is come to nature, be with nature, and then realize your own true nature. And then share and spread and serve and love with that nature. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jai Ganga.